At 7:12 on a Wednesday morning, frost still clung to the roof of Hale Auto and Diesel. Claire Bennett crossed the gravel lot with a clipboard and a signed acquisition memo. She saw no for sale sign, only a painted board, Hale Auto and Diesel Est, 1,968, and a man wiping his hands on a shop rag. She told him the purchase had closed last Thursday. He said, "Ma'am, I don't know who sold you this land, but it wasn't mine to sell, and it sure as hell wasn't hers." She looked down at the contract. Seller line, Vanessa Hale. The name on the door behind him, Daniel Hale. Claire sat in the rental SUV for 22 minutes before she called Denver. She kept the engine off. Through the windshield, she watched Daniel Hale walk back into the garage bay and crouch beside a 1998 F-250, resuming whatever he had been doing before she arrived. He did not look back at her. He did not call anyone. He just kept working, as though the complication she represented was small and would either sort itself or it wouldn't. She told the legal team she needed a full chain of title on the Bozeman parcel. Within the hour, 3 weeks earlier, she had been in a conference room in Denver. Marcus Voss had set a folder on the table in front of her, already tabbed and initialed, and said, "Clean deal, Claire, seller motivated. We move fast." She had signed the acquisition memo without asking about the seller's name. That was not unusual. She handled 100 transactions a year. She did not read every deed before she greenlit due diligence. Now she wished she had. The chain of title arrived at 40 minutes past 10. She read it on her phone, then opened her laptop and read it again. The seller of record was Vanessa Hale, execution date 6 weeks prior, notarized in Helena, not Bozeman, Helena, 160 miles north. The sale price was $180,000, conveyed to a limited liability company called Crestline Holdings. She pulled Crestline in the company's internal registry. 3 shell layers, Delaware Incorporation. The final layer resolved to an entity controlled by a holding group linked to Marcus Voss. She closed the laptop and sat there for a while. She thought about the acquisition memo she had signed in Denver, the way Marcus had placed the folder in front of her, already tabbed and initialed, already solved. She had not asked the name of the seller. She handled 100 transactions a year, and sellers were abstractions motivated or reluctant, disclosed or not. She had not asked, and Marcus had not offered, and that gap between them was where a fraud had quietly installed itself. At 11 o'clock she got out of the SUV and walked back into the garage. She was not carrying the clipboard this time. She asked Daniel Hale if he knew the name Crestline Holdings. He straightened up from under the truck hood, looked at her, and shook his head once, slowly, the way a person does when they're not surprised, just tired. He wiped his hands again and said she could come in back. The rear office was small. A wooden desk, a calendar from 2024 still on the wall, never flipped, a shelf with 3 automotive manuals, and a framed photograph of a young woman with red hair and a newborn bundled against her chest. Daniel opened a file drawer and produced a manila folder, thin, worn at the corners. Inside was a photocopied document. Hale Family Trust, established 1968, Gallatin County, Montana. He had one passage circled in pencil. She read it. "No spouse, by marriage or divorce, shall hold transferable interest in trust corpus." The silence lasted long enough for him to pour coffee from a machine on the counter and set a mug in front of her without being asked. She looked up. How long was she your wife before she signed this? He sat down across from her. 11 years. She never asked to see it. Claire drove back to the Element Hotel in downtown Bozeman at noon. She did not call the company's general counsel. She called Helen Ortiz, who had been her roommate at Wharton and was now a real estate attorney in Chicago. She kept the call brief. She read Helen the trust language from a photo she had taken with her phone. Helen was quiet for a moment. Then she said she would call back in an hour. The next morning, Claire returned to the garage on the pretext of supplemental due diligence. She told herself it was a reasonable cover. Daniel Hale was underneath a Tacoma when she arrived, only his legs visible, one boot propped against the frame rail. She sat on an oil drum near the bay entrance and waited. She had been there perhaps 20 minutes when a dark gray Audi Q7 pulled into the lot. A man in his 60s stepped out wearing a navy blazer over a collared shirt. His hair was white and trimmed close. He walked directly to the garage without looking at Claire. leaned down, and addressed the pair of legs beneath the Tacoma. "Dr. Hale," the man said, "I have the renewal for you to look at." Daniel rolled out from under the truck. He stood, took the envelope the man held out, and set it unopened on the workbench. The man nodded, said he hoped Daniel would consider it this time, and walked back to the Audi. He did not acknowledge Claire. In 30 seconds the car was gone. She asked. Daniel took a rag off the bench and worked it between his fingers. He said he had gone to Stanford for civil engineering, undergrad, 2003 to 2007, then MIT for a master's in structural engineering, 2007 to 2009. He had worked for a firm called Hayworth Renton in Seattle for 7 years, designed long-span bridge systems. He had 2 patents, both for post-tensioned concrete configurations used in ocean crossings. Claire looked at him. He said it the way you might read facts off an old insurance form. No pride, no grief, just data that had once been a life and was now a record. The envelope was a consulting contract. The man came out every 3 months, same firm, same offer, updated number each time. Daniel declined every 3 months. He did not explain this. He did not seem to think it required explanation. Claire looked around the garage. The tools hung in precise order on the pegboard. The invoice forms and the wire rack were in 2 stacks, sorted by date. The tire pressure gauges on the shelf were arranged smallest to largest. She had thought it was habit. Now she understood it was something else. She said, "Why didn't you tell anyone?" He set the rag down. "Tell who? My ex-wife? She wouldn't have stayed for it. She left for it." Claire did not ask what that meant. She already understood it. Vanessa Hale had not left because Daniel was poor. She had left because he had chosen to look poor, and that choice had been entirely his, and she had never been able to forgive him for it. At 2:45 that afternoon, the side door opened, and a 9-year-old boy in a backpack came through it. He saw Claire and stopped. He said, "Hi, ma'am," in a careful voice, and then went directly into the back office. Daniel walked past her without a word, reached into a paper bag on the counter, and placed 4 apple slices on the desk in front of the boy. He did not break stride. He did not look at the boy to check whether the boy was looking at him. Claire turned toward the bay door and studied the parking lot. She was walking to her car when her phone rang. Marcus Voss. She looked at the screen for 2 full rings, then answered. "You still in Bozeman?" he said. "Sign the closing. Come home." She told him she needed another day. He said there was nothing to review. She said goodnight and hung up. Helen called back at 9 that evening. Claire was sitting on the bed in her room at the Element, the chain of title printed on hotel paper in 3 pages on the comforter beside her. Helen said, "If that trust language holds, your company bought stolen property, not disputed property. Stolen. You signed the closing memo, you're personally liable, not the company, you." Claire thanked her and asked her to stay available. She did not sleep well. In the morning she caught the 6:40 flight to Denver International and was in the Bennett Vance office by 9:15. She found Marcus in the hall outside the conference room and asked him directly about Crestline Holdings. He smiled the way he always smiled when something was being treated as a problem that he had already filed away as solved. He said she was tired. He said Montana did that to people. He said the seller signed, the notary stamped, and they would close on Friday. She brought up the spousal exclusion. His face changed for a moment, just a moment. Then he said it was a family matter, not theirs. In the meeting afterward, reviewing the acquisition file with 2 of the firm's senior partners, she understood that both of them had known about Crestline from the beginning. She was the only signatory who had not. She had been chosen for the memo precisely because her name was clean. She left the conference room at 11 and did not speak to anyone on the way out. The return flight landed in Bozeman at dusk. She stood outside the terminal for 6 minutes on the sidewalk. The Bridger Range to the east was dark under low cloud, only the faintest outline visible, the kind of presence you felt more than saw. The air was cold and carried something mineral and clean that Denver's Front Range never quite managed. A shuttle driver asked if she needed the hotel zone. She shook her head. She waited until she was ready, and then she got a cab. The garage was dark. She drove past it and continued another mile to a small ranch house set back from the road with 2 cottonwood trees in the front yard. The porch light was on. She knocked. Daniel opened the door. He was not surprised to see her. He stepped back and let her in without asking why she had come. Eli was already in bed. They sat at the kitchen table. She told him she had come to Bozeman to accelerate a transaction and that she was now trying to find a way to stop it. He asked if she was sure about that. She said she was not. She said, "But I know what signing the wrong thing feels like. I did it once before in my marriage." He did not ask about the marriage. He got up and filled a glass of water from the tap and set it in front of her. When she left 20 minutes later, she placed Helen Ortiz's business card on the table beside the salt shaker. Daniel was still at the table when the sound of her car faded down the road. He picked up the card and looked at it for a long time. That night, 200 miles north, a phone on Vanessa Hale's kitchen counter lit up with a message from a number she did not recognize. One line, "Crestline is going to burn. Get out." She read it twice, then set the phone face down. Saturday was different. The garage was not officially open, but the bay doors were rolled up halfway because the weather was holding, and Daniel preferred the light. Claire arrived just after 9 carrying a white pastry box from Wild Crumb on East Main. She did not offer an explanation. She set it on the counter near the coffee machine and opened the lid. Eli was on a shop stool near the wall, a sketchbook on his knees, working on something with a pencil. Daniel was on his back under the workbench rehanging a bottom hinge that had pulled loose from the frame. She poured herself coffee from the machine and sat in the chair near the door. For a while no one spoke. She picked up a copy of the Bozeman Daily Chronicle that was folded on the seat beside her and read about a water rights dispute in the Gallatin Valley and a proposal to widen the interchange at North 19th. Daniel worked. Eli worked. The mountains were visible through the open bay doors, pale and enormous above the tree line. "Do you know how many plates a stegosaurus had?" Eli said. Claire looked up from the paper.